Good moment, everyone. You are tuning in to Intuitive View with me, intuitive medium Deborah Hanlon. This is a program, a podcast, and a video show where it's about everything. Honestly, it's about personal development. It's about you. It's about your intuition. It's about how to grow, how to transform, how to get through life, because life is hard. This is the harder dimension. The afterlife is much easier. I just completed my first book called In the Presence of Proof, and it is all about the afterlife and the afterlife that we endure in every moment. So that's available on Amazon, and you can go to my website, deborahhanlon.com, for more information about that. So this show is just sort of organic. I just want to reach people and hear from you and be able to help you with an intuitive view on life, on your issues, on family dynamics, on grief, on loss, on current events, you name it. We need to discuss it so that we can move the energy in a much more flowing and positive direction. And today I have a really super exciting guest for me because this man is, I consider him a friend. I consider him a colleague. I consider him a mentor to me. So joining me this morning today is Dr. Paul Coleman. And good morning, Paul. How are you?
Hi, Deborah. I am doing really well. I'm so happy to be here. This is fun.
Oh, I'm so happy to have you. So beyond happy. Paul is a very well-known author, an amazing psychologist, has sat with thousands upon thousands of clients, a medium, an actor, a father, a husband, and now I'm hearing you're a songwriter as well.
Well, yeah, I've always loved music, and I've always played music, and I've always sung. And when my kids were little, I would sing, with my guitar while they were in the bathtub, kind of thing. And they're all married now, and every one of them had asked me to sing, perform at their wedding. My daughter, the last one to get married, however, raised the stakes. And she said, "Dad, I want you to write me a song and sing it at the reception." So it had to be, of course, a perfect song. And so I did. I wrote it and I sang it for her at the reception, myself and my guitar. But I also, prior to that, went to a recording studio and I embellished it. I added harmonies. I added a little electric guitar, a little piano, bass, and drums. And now it's on iTunes.
Wow. Of course it is.
It would be a great father-daughter dance song at a wedding. It's called I Do. And if you look up my name, Paul Coleman, go to CD Baby or iTunes, you'll come across it. And for 99 cents, it's all yours.
Oh, that's fantastic. I'm going to post about that as well. So it's on iTunes called I Do, and Paul Coleman is what you'll have to search for. I'm going to look that up right after this call.
Yeah. So
although I have no plans to be getting married anytime soon, but I'm still going to enjoy the song, I'm sure.
I think so.
So I'm so grateful that you're taking time out of your busy schedule to be here with me today because you just are, to me, someone who has so much value to add to the world from your intuitive perspective, from your intelligent mind. You just seem to have it. Do you know what I mean? You just seem to really be able to plug into where people are at and really help make shifts in people. And I know that firsthand. I mean, I've come to Paul myself when I'm having a block or an issue or something is just too big for me that I can't get out of my own way. I call you.
Well, I thank you for those kind words. I kind of shrink a little bit hearing them, but I do appreciate them. I really feel blessed. I grew up with really a terrific family, and my parents were just wonderful. We didn't have much money. It was pretty much, check by check or paycheck by paycheck. We actually lived close to town. We couldn't afford a car, actually, so we walked everywhere. So the simple things meant a lot. I remember being in grad school, and by that time my dad was retired and he'd had a heart attack, And, he'd send me a letter. These were the letter days. This is before, and there'd be a $10 bill in it, saying, hey, go out and have a beer with your friends or whatever. That $10 meant a lot, So that's the kind of situation that I grew up in. So I appreciated everything. Don't take anything for granted. And the simple things mean a lot to me. And I've always had an interest in theater and in acting. I did that in school. I wrote a play in 4th grade and performed it in the first of my class.
You're definitely no slacker, that's for sure.
But when you think about it, acting and taking on a character's role, being a psychologist and sitting across people with very different personalities and very different life stories, you sort of drink it all in. And you get to know people and you get to sense what people are all about. Sometimes with very little information, you kind of can say, oh, I have a sense of where this is going. So a lot of life experiences that really all come together to contribute to why I do what I do. So.
You make a valuable point that it's making me think, because oftentimes when I'm doing readings, we assume the personality and the mannerisms of the person coming through. And often I think to myself, my gosh, actors are mediums. But they don't even know it because you are pulling in a character. I mean, in some cases that character is, I want to say fictitious, but there's no such thing as that because they're obviously pulling on the energy of a being somewhere. But that's it. Do you feel that acting, and I've never acted, I don't have a voice, I don't have any performance arts ability in that regard, or I have not established that role. But do you find acting to be very similar to mediumship, or do you use one to help with the other?
I find that there are similarities. It's an interesting question. I mean, it's a different mindset in some levels. You're learning a script with acting. With mediumship, there is no script.
That's for sure.
You don't know what's going to come out of your mouth. Right?
Okay, that is for sure.
So you don't have the comfort. You don't have the comfort of that. A good actor, a very good actor, is first of all a very good listener. And the reason I say that is because when you are with another actor on stage, they don't always say their lines in precisely the same way. They change it, or they look at you differently, or they turn around when that wasn't really in the script to do that, and you have to react to what they're giving you. Otherwise, it sounds hollow, it sounds fake, you know. If an actor is supposed to be angry, but they don't speak in an angry way, and my line is supposed to be, hey, calm down, I can't say that line if they weren't revved up.
Right. So it really is this energetic exchange of the moment, too.
You really have to listen well. And certainly as a psychologist, you have to listen well. And when you're acting, you want to become the character. In the beginning, you don't know. You're trying to get a feel for it. But there's a point where you are that character. And that's very similar to mediumship when you're in a kind of a semi-trance state. And sometimes the spirit gets really close to you. And they kind of meld in with you. And you find yourself doing things with your hands or your lips or your speech pattern that you didn't realize you were doing. You didn't think about doing it. You just did it.
Yes.
All right. So that's very similar.
It is very similar. It's funny. I call it, they got too close. I always say that every time I have them, like they got too close. Like I can't stop doing this behavior now. So it is an ironic occurrence that you really can't quite explain that's happening.
It's one of those, we know it's there. We can't really figure out how, what, where. It just happens.
Right.
And you can't always bring it. Sometimes it just doesn't happen.
Exactly. And that really depends on,
struggling as a medium.
Right. Right. That is the thing. Mediumship is it's a science in my mind, but it is not a precise science.
Yes, it's not. And some days it's just not working as well, which is so hard. You hate to sit across from somebody, or you're in a large group and it's a struggle.
I always find that I'm sorry, go ahead.
You know that there are people out there who are skeptical. And so if you do a poor job, or at least a job that isn't all that compelling, they're going to walk away saying this is bunk. And yet you and I know it is not bunk. It's actually true.
Yes.
And it's so amazing when you think about it.
Yep.
Right? And it's such a sacred thing that you don't want to minimize it through errors or something, but it's not a perfect science.
Right. And do you have, because I do, after doing this for so many years, I still have that mindset of a skeptic, meaning I do think in the middle of my events, personal one-on-one sessions or group events, how many people are not getting to see that this is really true because sometimes the information isn't clear. I can't quite grasp it. Or a lot of times the listener is not thinking about the thing that they're discussing or don't know it. So do you still have that kind of flash in your head? Because I do still have that flash in my head. And I've thankfully much better at saying, Deb, you've got to let that go. And whoever's going to believe and receive are going to, and who's not is not going to. But do you also have that?
Yeah. I mean, it's every time I have, butterflies in my stomach.
Yes.
And it's like, is it going to work this time? I mean,
Yes.
Fortunately, the vast majority of the times it does.
Yes.
But yeah, I think it's a tremendous responsibility.
Yes.
We can make a huge difference in somebody's life, not just if they get in touch with a loved one, but also their belief system.
Yes.
I've had people that all of a sudden change their belief system, thinking there is an afterlife. Right. My loved ones are around me. Huge responsibility. So I take it very seriously. Mm-hmm. And I do that in my work as well as a psychologist or in writing. I take it all very seriously so I can be my own worst critic.
Yes. Yes. Well, I think that's what's so valuable too about you, that you are a psychologist, because mediumship, I also take it exactly as you do, so seriously. And I try to keep it lighthearted, and I try to keep it moving in the events. And there's always a balance between keeping people's attention and healing. But there's such a strong and powerful moment of moving someone or transforming someone psychologically. And I think that's such a gift that you have the ability to serve as both roles.
Yeah, I do feel blessed in that. I really feel like, being a psychologist was definitely my calling. Mm-hmm. And the mediumship was a surprise. I really wasn't expecting that. And I only became aware of it 16 years ago. I'm like a lot of other people in the 20s. I had lots of interesting moments, psychic moments, but they were random. But when they were there, they really stood out and made me say, what the heck is going on?
Mm-hmm. That's for sure.
I remember a quick story. It was 1982, I think. I had just gotten married, moved here to Dutchess County, and I was driving to Massachusetts with my wife to visit my family. And my wife said, do some psychic stuff. Now, she said that because I must have had some psychic moments. I don't remember what they were. Mm-hmm. Right? But this was very early on, and I was a little uneasy about it. And the question unnerved me because I don't know how to do it. Mm-hmm. So as we're driving, it was in August, and it was 100 degrees in the shade. Mm-hmm. And we were driving a car that was a it was actually, you know what it was? It was an AMC Spirit. That was the
that's good. Of course it is. Of course it is.
Which at the time
can't be a Dodge Ram. It's got to be a Spirit.
Spirit. It didn't have air conditioning, so I had the window open because it was so hot. And I said, okay, I'll think of something psychic. And I saw the color yellow, and I don't know what that means. And then the color yellow started to take shape like a small cylinder, and it actually looked like a bullet. All right. Mm-hmm. And I said, gee, this yellow cylinder is moving toward me. And I see the capital letter B. And we started to figure out, what does this possibly mean? And about 30 seconds later, through the open window, a yellow jacket, came into my window, hit me on the chest, and landed on the floor in front of my wife. So it was a bee. It was a yellow jacket coming at me. Now, what are the odds you're going 60 miles an hour and a bee intersects with you in 30 seconds?
Right.
I literally looked to the sky and said, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this.
Next time, can't you just give me lotto numbers?
I know. It didn't leave. And back in 2002, it all kind of came together, and I went, oh my gosh, this is happening. And then I just went to workshop after workshop after workshop.
And that's where we've met. We met at a development circle, which was just so amazing. We were both in the beginning of our journeys. Well, I was at the beginning of my journey. It was roughly about the same time, and that's how we met. So the universe is brilliant. But I love that story because a lot of times people have this perception that our intuition is crystal clear all the time, and it takes a level of first awareness of what's coming to you, and then perception and patience in receiving it. Yes?
Very much so. And it's very subtle, and you have to learn to trust. And that's the hardest thing. And you have to learn to get your mind out of it, your thinking head out of it. Because the minute we start to analyze, I was in a workshop recently with a British medium, Paul Jacobs. And we did this exercise. It was a simple exercise where there's a group of us and we just had to bring out one clairvoyant image that would make sense for somebody there having to do with a relative of theirs who passed on. And I saw very clearly a cow behind a fence. So, all right, well, this isn't all that exciting. It's not like I see a piece of jewelry with 3 hearts and, So I then said, does anyone here in spirit, does anyone know someone in spirit who maybe had farmland and had cows? Nobody raised their hand. And Paul Jacobs looked at me and he said, that's not what you saw. You saw a cow. Did you see a farmer? No. You just presumed farmer. So say it differently. And I said, okay, does anyone here have a loved one in spirit who owned a cow? And a woman raised her hand. She said, yes, I grew up in Poland and my mother had a cow.
Wow.
It was used to get milk.
Wow.
It's like, goodness gracious, my head got in the way.
Right. Right.
Right. So it's very, very tricky. It's not AT&T.
Right.
Their channel.
Right. It's a science, but it's not a science that I think it's not a universal science. The way you saw that may come very differently from how I would see that. So it's just we are the specialized instrument. Each medium, each human being on the planet is the specialized instrument of messaging and receiving.
Right.
Amazing. Wow. I like these stories because I want listeners to hear them, because so many people will say to me, and I'm sure to you as well, I'm not very intuitive, or I don't really get this, or my loved ones never come to me. And I'm always like, no, they're coming to you. They're not seeking us out for you because they know like we're kind of busy over here. They're speaking to us directly all the time, to everyone. It's just we don't know how to necessarily pay attention and be aware. So it's nice, I think, for listeners to hear that sometimes mediums, we're like, what the heck does this mean? We don't know. We have no idea. And that we can actually get the information wrong. Like you said, you jumped to farm and It wasn't that. How did Paul know? Did he share how he knew you didn't see a whole farm, or had you shared that?
No, because part of his teaching was, he said, I want you to be very precise. When you see something, don't embellish it, at least not right away. There may be more to it, but first start with that, because it's in the embellishment. You could say something and people aren't going to raise their hand because of the embellishment, but it isn't necessarily what you saw. Now, in my experience, I have things that are symbolic, and they, like if I see an evergreen tree, what does that mean? I know what it means for me. What it means for me, and I've come to learn this, is that something around Christmas is also significant other than Christmas, a birthday, an anniversary, or a passing. But that wasn't my initial interpretation. My initial interpretation is I see an evergreen tree, right? But it was only through trial and error that I learned that, oh, wait a minute. Every time I see an evergreen tree, someone says, well, they had a birthday on December 28th. Oh,
Yeah.
right. So these are all unique to me. So it is complicated, and it takes time, and whatever level we get at is just a level. There's always another level and another level.
Exactly. It's like, when will I get there?
Yeah. So I try to go to a workshop every year because I don't know what I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to be so comfortable in what I'm doing that I may be doing something which is maybe a little off, but it's okay, when maybe it could be better.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also nice to hang around people with similar experiences, because it's not something I bring up at a party.
At all.
No.
Right.
I mean,
Me either.
As a psychologist, when this started for me, I didn't tell anybody.
I bet.
I'm hearing and seeing things. There's a psychiatrist down the hall from me that would probably want to put me on medication.
And possibly tell you to stop practicing for a little while.
So I took it very seriously, like I did with my being a student. And before I became a psychologist, I'm going to study. I'm going to learn. I'm going to go and do things before I even consider putting myself out there.
Yes.
And even now I do, but it's in a limited way. I'm too busy with my psychology practice. And I don't use it in my psychology. I don't do mediumship, I should say, when I'm doing a therapy session.
Right.
It's hard to say I don't do psychic stuff, because sometimes you just get it and you can't help it.
Right.
You just tuned into something. I can just tell that this person is not telling me this, or they're avoiding that. But I don't.
That's such a gift. I mean, that's such a gift in therapy. It really is for the client, for you. I'm going to take a quick break for those of you who are listening through a podcast. We're going to take a quick break, and I have a little surprise for you during the break for those who are listening, just in podcast form. For those of you who are watching on YouTube, we're just going to keep effortlessly moving forward. I'm speaking with Paul Coleman, psychologist, friend, mentor, medium, songwriter now. I mean, he has such an impressive background. His website is paul-coleman.com. Check him out. Listen for his new song for father-daughters called I Do. There's a lot to learn about Paul. I'd like to take that comment that you just made about room for learning and transformation and growing, kind of apply that to our listeners today on what is it they need to do? When someone comes to you and they need help on whatever it is, what are the basic first steps you could tell someone to move forward?
Yeah, well,
heavy question.
It is, because there's so many different problems they come in with. Sometimes people want to go back to the status quo. They're having a temporary situational problem, and they just want it gone so they can go back to their old life, right? And maybe that's good, all right? Maybe they're having panic attacks, and they just want to get rid of the panic attacks so they can function again. Great. But then there are many people who something has happened where they're now in some sort of transition, like the old world isn't really going to exist anymore. Maybe because it's a major job change, somebody passed away, major health issue, major loss. Something has happened where the past is in the past, but they don't know where they're going. That's a different type of problem. And those are the kind I really like to help people with, because I know I'm going to help try to move them up, or to become more aware, more awake, right? So they're going to change their outlook on things. They're going to have to shed certain belief systems that no longer work for them, whatever it is, to get to that new place. And that's where the real transformation comes. It comes from, one of my favorite things to hear from a client is, oh, I never thought about it that way before. Shift, right? And then they look at the world differently. They look at themselves differently. right? And a lot of it is getting out of fear and desire. Fears keep us stuck. And desire, we all have desires. We want this, we want that. There's nothing wrong with it per se. You can get so stuck on a desire that you may not realize that you're going in a direction that isn't helping you. And maybe what you want isn't really what you need.
Right.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
We think we know what we need.
Mm-hmm.
And I think all of us, if you've lived long enough, I always say this, if you've lived long enough, if you've loved hard enough, you can look back on your life and see times when you really wanted something to happen and it didn't, and you're grateful for it.
Yes. Yep. Which you can't believe in the time that when you're not getting it. You can't believe that that's going to be true, that statement, because we take out that bigger hammer and I'm going to try harder and I'm going to get this and I'm going to make this happen. And the universe is kind of like, all right, you could try, but you're going to like completely exhaust yourself with this and go have at it. And I'll be over here making magic happen.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So that requires trust, that can happen. So the three letters I like people to remember: AFT, acceptance, faith, and trust. Accepting the situation as it is doesn't mean you like it. Doesn't mean you can't do something about it. It means don't resist or fight emotionally that which is already occurring or has occurred. You're shaking a fist at the rain. It's not going to change the rain. If we can emotionally accept a situation, this is what it is. I don't have to like it. Maybe there's something I can do about it, but I have to accept this as a reality. Now you are on a better path. Because I tell people the lower emotions, the fear emotions, anger, worry, guilt, depression, you want to get to the higher ones, right? Which is joy, love, forgiveness, trust, faith, peace. There's a bridge from the lower to the higher. And that bridge is called emotional acceptance.
Ah, I like that.
So when you can accept things, you're no longer fighting it. You now have a chance to get to that higher level. And that's where faith and trust comes in. Because we can't control all outcomes. We can only control our part of the process. And when you trust that there's people, spirits, whatever, working with you, you can allow an outcome to occur that may not be what you want. Because you're trusting it can still be for your benefit. We just don't know what that might be right now. Can you live with that? A lot of people can't.
Right.
They need to know.
Yes, right.
Right? I think one of the strongest traits we want to cultivate is to peacefully coexist with uncertainty.
Absolutely.
We want to know too much. We want to know what the outcome is, know what the answer is. Is it going to work? Is it not going to work? When we have to be able to coexist with the uncertainties. And when we can make that our friend, we can actually be guided. When we're resisting it, we actually may fall into a trap. So those are the kinds of things that I want people to understand and to cultivate.
And how, I think what you're talking about is the human problem, that where we can't so often get to that place for whatever reasons, because either we're not wired that way or we weren't taught that way, or some things we can be that way with, meaning we can accept what is, and other things we just can't. I know I've had those things in my life, and I've come to you many times of saying, I just can't get past this, or I just can't, move. So that, it's not a static problem for everyone, but I've noticed for me, it comes down to actually feeling it, because when we're discussing it with clients, it's still all on a thought basis. Like, you have to come to acceptance. How could you, or what are tools and techniques that you use and that actually help people feel that they get into that feeling of it, where they can actually apply it?
Good question. One thing to do is take everything that goes wrong during the day, the littlest thing. You drop your car keys on the ground and you have to pick them up. It's no big deal. You can't find something right away. You're stuck in traffic. You're at a red light. Repeat, I don't like it, but I accept it. I don't like it, but I accept it. For all the little things. What you're actually doing when you do that is you're starting to punch holes in a good way, opening doorways to the right side of your brain, which is that side that is more peaceful. Right? The right side of your brain goes with the flow. Don't worry, be happy. Let's cross that bridge when we get there. We're all left-brained, you know. So just by saying, I don't like it, I accept it, you can notice a shift in how you feel. The tension level, you just may notice like air coming out of you. Right? The other exercise, it's a little longer. It's in my book, Finding Peace When Your Heart is in Pieces, and I call it the train of thoughts. I won't have time maybe right now to explain it all, but the gist of it is, you know how we have these debates in our head? I want to do this, but if I do that, this might happen. And what if that happens? And then what am I going to do to fix that?
Oh, no, I don't know anything about that debate.
Overthinking, right?
Yes.
We create outcomes with problems, and then we try to come up with solutions, and we can't, and we have bigger problems, and we just, right? So whatever the problem is, we have a debate in our head. It's like a tennis match. Da-da, do-do, what if this, what if that? That tennis match itself creates the stress. We think it's the problem that's stressful. The tennis match is stressful. So I ask people, take each thought one at a time. Don't ask a question. Change the question into a statement. So if the question is my relationship going to succeed? Change it. It might be, I'm worried if my relationship will succeed, or I hope my relationship succeeds. Change it into a statement. Then preface the statement with the words, I accept. I accept. I'm worried my relationship will succeed. What's the next thought? Next thought might be, because I'd be miserable if we broke up. I accept I'd be miserable if we broke up. And I can't imagine being without this person. I accept I can't imagine being without this person. But my friends tell me there's other people for me. I accept my friends tell me. So what you're doing, you're having sometimes competing thoughts, and you're accepting each. You're accepting opposites.
Yes.
And you're not debating it anymore because you're accepting everything. So there's no more battle. There's no more fight. You're peacefully coexisting with opposites.
Which is everything, and which means all potential and the potential for anything to occur.
Yes.
Yes.
Because there's light, there's dark, there's good, there's bad. There's always opposites.
Yes.
We're just going to be at peace with it.
Yes. I call this 0 point. We get to the 0 point in physics. There is this space called 0 point that is the absence of it's a void. It's nothing. It's the absence of everything, and therefore all potential exists in that space. So everything exists in a space of a void. So that sounds exactly as that.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like
It's so I'm like 0 point. I have to get to 0 point. So I love those two examples because one, they're very, very doable. They're very, very practical. Taking the first one first, that's brilliant, Paul, as far as starting to notice the little things that aren't going right. Like you said, I dropped my keys. It really wasn't a big deal. I mean, I dropped my keys. It happens. Spilled coffee, made a wrong turn. You know, I'm late. I woke up late, whatever it is. But to start, you're saying to become aware of the times things aren't going right, quote unquote, right, and slow yourself down enough to notice it and pay attention and start basically practicing the acceptance of those, so that as the larger things happen, your body's already schooled on learning how to accept. Am I getting that correctly?
Exactly, because we have to teach our brain, to allow for that. Yes. We do it normally without thinking. If I'm walking down a flight of stairs, I'm not worried about falling. I might be if I had a sprained ankle. We do a lot of things. We drive our cars. I'm not worried about an accident.
Right.
Could happen. But then we choose things that we do worry about.
Yes. I was
giving a lecture recently to about 150 people called Evidence for the Afterlife.
Yes.
And it was part of a series of courses that people could take. So they had other options in the building to go to a different lecture. And 5 minutes before I'm about to speak, the PowerPoint presentation is up. It has the title, Evidence for an Afterlife. And this man walked by me, kind of groused at me, said, no, 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 no. And then he pointed at me, what came before the Big Bang? You don't know, do you? What came before God? You have no idea. And then he left. So he was clearly unhappy with the topic. This is 5 minutes before I'm supposed to give a lecture, right? And I just went, okay, I accept it. It is what it is. I don't want to take it personally. I don't want to get ruffled. I got a job to do. People think what they think. So that's where the acceptance comes in handy. I do it so much that when things take me by surprise that I don't like, I got rear-ended. Okay, that happened. I got rear-ended in front of 7-Eleven, and okay.
Here we go. Right.
Here we go. I don't want to get caught up in the emotions that I don't need.
And then the recreation of the story that you might have been telling yourself, nothing ever goes right for me. See, I knew this was going to happen. And then it just runs with it. So that's a super, I mean, I am so going to apply that because it's just a super awareness, if nothing else. I mean, like you said, it's training your brain, what's better than that, but it's a super awareness of recognizing the little things that don't go right, and you're not harping on them and freaking out about them. So really the energetic difference is what we place upon what we're focusing on.
Right.
So that's a great.
I'm sure you've heard this statement, and I like it. Is it always true? I don't know, but I think it helps. Things are not happening to me, they're happening for me. Right? I'm sure you've used that.
Yes.
And it gives you pause. Do I believe it's happening for me? Well, maybe I don't. Okay, well, what if you believed? How would you feel if you believed it? I'd feel better. Oh, okay. Well, isn't that a good option to take right now?
Yes.
Consider that possibility.
I think we forget. I think we are so mired in our seemingly, this is me, my perception, my ego, this is who I am. I think we're so dug into who we think we are that we forget that, like you said earlier, I don't know what I don't know. And I think that's such a great statement in and of itself for people to realize, like, wow, there are things I don't know. And there's things about myself I don't even know, which is opening that gateway for transformation and shift and changes.
Yeah. It's being open to that. It's being, realizing, hey, I don't know everything. So many people are smarter than I am, more knowledgeable, have other experiences that if I listen to, I'd go, wow, I want to open myself up to that. We need enough ego to get us through the day, to get our jobs done, but we also have to say, I'm part of something bigger. There's more going on around me. Can I be open to that?
And that's it.
Yeah.
That's pretty simple.
Yeah. I think another philosophy, people can come into my office and they might have legitimate gripes about their parents or an unfair workplace, and they're miserable. And I can understand that. And yet, just sitting here talking about how bad their parents were or their boss is or how unfair it is doesn't really help them in the long run. They might feel understood, good. They might feel that I care, good. But now what? Now the hard work is, how do we help you to find a way to be happier in life without those other situations changing, because they may not change, especially if they're already happened. We give up our power when we insist that other people have to change for us to be happy. It's one thing to ask them, to work with them, but at some point we have to say, I gotta take that responsibility. And when we don't do that, we lose our power.
And don't grow and don't open up, because I always feel that when I'm getting to that space where things are so tough in any one area, whether it's job, career, family, that is showing me that, oh man, it's time to grow in this department, in this area. So if someone is having a hard time at work and the interpersonal relationships, really what that is they're grown out of the old dynamic and it's not working anymore for whatever reasons. Why? Who knows? Why does the seed poke through the earth at the time it does? We don't know. and that's always a reminder to me, not that I like it, trust me. And I know better. I don't always do better. But that very concept of realizing that when you're suddenly feeling the clinch and the pinch, it's time to grow and move and change things. And people need help with that.
Yeah. And you don't want to grow cynically.
Mm.
That's so much harder. Like anything else, we had a certain mindset when we were teenagers of what was important and how we acted. And hopefully, at least some of those mindsets, we outgrew. But we could see the value to them as teenagers.
Right.
But we outgrew them. The fact that we may be 40 or 50 doesn't mean that we have everything in order right now in terms of our mindset and our belief systems. And as soon as we keep hitting our head against the wall and we're not doing well with work or relationships or are just generally unhappy, there's something about our belief system that isn't working. Maybe it's time to let go of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think if people hear it that way, they realize that, oh, good, it's just a part of being human. It's not that I'm messed up, because I know so many people think like, oh, I'm a screw up, or I can't do that, or I'm incapable, or, then we create the story, kind of like what you were saying on the first half of the show about, being very precise with your imagery from the class you were taking. It's kind of the same principle, actually. Go with the facts. Go with what you're seeing in an intuitive message. And same thing in our life. Go with the facts. Go with what's true. Right now I'm feeling pinched for whatever reason or feeling upset. We don't need to embellish it. We don't need to create this whole story around it. Let's just go with the facts and stick with the facts and then move forward and handle the facts and see.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just got a big aha moment on that.
Right. So it never stops. The growth never stops. I'll see people that they overcame some trauma. They really overcame something. And then 20 years later, they're back a little bit into it. And they're saying, I thought I'd get past this. And I'll tell them, you did for the time of life you were in.
Mm.
But then something changed in your life. You had kids, or you got married, or you relocated, or you had a health scare. Now we have to revisit some of those old patterns that you thought you got rid of because they're reemerging in this new context. And we have to work it through there. It may be a lot easier to work it through this time because you already worked it through before. But it doesn't mean that you've done something wrong.
That's key, because I think that's where people get so stuck. Like, here I am again. I know I get that way. I know I'm like, why can't I shake this? What did I do here? I thought I had it all together. And that's such an important nugget for people to take away, to remind you that it's called being human. Yeah. Amazing. Outrageous. Here, I always have these huge, always, every time I sit with you, I have these like, bloop, the light goes on. I think it's just needing to be with someone who can bounce back wherever you're at. And I think you're super, super skilled at that, Paul.
Well, thank you, Deborah. We all need people to bounce things off of. It's just in our own heads. We get lost. We start believing things that may not be true.
Right. Right.
So we do need to be anchored. That's why, isolation can be like a form of torture. Mm. We need it on some level, take a break, but you got to have somebody to bounce the truth off of, or your truth off of, so they can say, oh, that's crazy.
Right.
You don't know what you're talking about.
Right. Your mind is twisted.
That's right.
That's great.
That's right.
Well, we're going to run out of time. I can't believe this. I could sit with you, and I'm going to have you back on the show if you would be so happy to come back on this show.
Always happy anytime.
Oh, because there's so much more. I mean, we have scratched the surface with what Paul is knowledgeable in and can do. So I'm probably going to have you on as a regular, just as kind of our resident psychologist here on Intuitive View. So share with everyone your website and your stuff and what's going on, your book, everything.
My book is called Finding Peace When Your Heart is in Pieces, and you can get it on Amazon, my website, and if I'm lucky, it'll be in a bookstore, but it's hard to know if it's always going to be there. My website would be my name, Paul Coleman, with a dash between the Paul and the Coleman, or you can go to talksbypaul.com. And if you go to iTunes or CD Baby and you look my name up with the title I Do, you'll see a picture of me dancing with my daughter, and there's a song, which I'm very happy about because, it's for my daughter. So it's a little bucket list thing, who'd have thunk it, Yeah, I'm on iTunes.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm going to have you back, and I will see you soon.
You got it, Deborah. You take good care and good luck with everything.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
All right.
Have a good one.